welcoming Paul Jones. He's the CEO of Care Concierge New England. A great concept. Paul, thanks for coming on. Tell us more about your business.
Yeah, sure. The Care Concierge focuses on two main pillars for my clients, which is finding them the best quality of life and helping my clients age in place. Typically, my clients are older adults, people who may be looking for assisted living or independent living, or families who are looking for memory support for a loved one who may have memory impairment. And how this all started is that I worked in the assisted living field for about 10 years before starting this business. I'd worked as an executive director, as a memory care director, and in some other roles as well over the years. And I noticed that a lot more families over the past, probably last 2 years or so, have been calling from this place of real crisis. And they call and say, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to start. We don't know what assisted living is versus a nursing home or anything like that. We don't even know what memory care is or how to start looking for a good place. And because I was always working for one particular community or company, I always had to guide people towards my company or community. Um, I'd break the rules sometimes and I'd say, well, you know what, this isn't the right place for you. You should try someplace else. And eventually got to the point where I said, I shouldn't feel bad about wanting to help people find what the best fit's going to be for them. And so I started the Care Concierge so that anybody can call me anytime and say, we need help navigating what all this senior care world is all about. And I can help them do that.
So tell us, how do you typically start to work with a client?
So it usually starts with a phone call. It's not always from the families themselves. Sometimes I'll get connected to a family from a social worker in a hospital or a discharge planner, elder law attorney, somebody like that. And they'll say, Paul, this family needs help. I'll have that initial conversation with my clients. It could be the older adult themselves. It could be their children. It depends on the different family situation. And what I'll do is I'll do a really deep dive into what it is this person or this family needs. What's the location they're seeking? What's the financial reality that they're working with? What are the amenities that are really important to them when they're looking for assisted living or memory support or anything like that? And a lot of other criteria as well. And from there, I make a curated list of two, maybe three different assisted living communities. I call them communities, not facilities, but just so people know that it's a assisted living building. And I'll tour these buildings with my clients just so that they know they have an in the moment advocate who can help them decipher some of the different things that may come up during a tour of these different assisted living communities. I don't like to waste anybody's time, so the recommendations I make are based on the initial meetings that I have with my clients to make sure that these places they're going to look at are matching with the criteria that I've been able to discover is most important to them. And for the communities I work with, I'm also making sure that the people that I'm bringing are financially qualified to be able to move into their community and not just move there, but stay there for the rest of their lives if they so choose. So I ask for a retainer fee from my clients, but I return that after they move in. So functionally, my services are completely free for my clients.
There are different types of assisted living facilities, right? What are they?
So there are three major types of assisted living in America today. The first one is independent living. Now, those are 55 plus communities that are for folks who typically are done with home ownership. They don't want to mow the lawn anymore. They don't want to shovel the walkway. They just want to enjoy their post-retirement years in a setting where they have people of like-minded experience. And these typically are places that don't have care services, or if they do, they're care services that are a la carte and by request. The next level and the most common level is traditional assisted living. Now, traditional assisted living gives people an opportunity to move into a supportive social environment. So, what that means is people are getting all those same great amenities that they're finding in independent living, but there's also that supportive safety net of having care services involved if they need it. Now, these aren't strictly medical care services, so you're not going to find things like ventilators or medical directors or things like that in assisted livings typically. But you will find certified nursing assistants and registered nurses who are helping manage the care services being provided on site. Then the third type of assisted living is memory support or memory care. And those are for folks who have some type of memory impairment. These are typically folks who are suffering from Alzheimer's or Lewy bodies dementia, frontotemporal lobe dementia, any of the other memory impairment symptoms that are out there. And the difference with memory support is that it's typically a smaller environment with more staff members, more focus on routine, and more focus on care services. And so those are the three different types of assisted living.
So everybody thinks assisted living is prohibitively expensive. Can you shed any light on how much it actually costs?
A lot of it does vary depending on location and what type of amenities are available. But typically in Rhode Island, you'll find that assisted living is around $4,500 a month. That sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. It's a lot of money. What's included in that typically are things like your meals, maybe some light housekeeping, some of the care services, depending on the community. So that's a lot of money, but there's a lot that goes into it as well. Now, for memory care, it can be more. It can be close to about $6,800 a month on average in Rhode Island. And different states are different costs as well. So Massachusetts is a little bit higher. Connecticut's around the same as Rhode Island. But when you compare these to other services that are out there, like nursing homes, for example, to private pay for a room in a nursing home can be sometimes double what you'd be paying in assisted living. And you have to ask yourself, really, are you getting a better quality of life in assisted living or skilled nursing? So yeah, no, the prices do vary a lot.
When's the best time for people to start thinking about this process and doing some research to start getting the facts?
The best time is as soon as possible. So as soon as you as a family start thinking about maybe it's going to be a good thing to consider assisted living, not for today or tomorrow, but maybe 6 months or a year down the road, that's the best time to call me. Most of my clients fall into two different categories. They either are those folks that are looking a year out and they have more time to consider options and make plans and really affect a smoother move process. And then I have families who call me because they're in a real crisis. Maybe they waited a long time, they put off conversations, and now they find themselves in a situation where they have to make a move and they have to make a move right away. Now, I work with families no matter what their situation is. But for those families who are able to call me sooner, just so they have a better idea of what it is they're looking for, they always wind up more satisfied with the choices they wind up making.
Makes sense. Makes sense. But about a year is really the kind of the lead time you recommend is about a year.
A year, 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the good news is for folks who start that early is the pressure's off.
Yeah.
Because once you start looking and once you start making your plans and having your ideas and narrowing down choices, if a situation comes up where a crisis does occur, you've already taken steps A, B, C, and D, so that when you need to make that move, you already have so much figured out that instead of it being a real crisis where things are up in the air and there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of maybe infighting between family members, a lot of the work's already done. And having somebody like me on board makes sure that I've got all your work saved and ready to go, so that you have your package ready when you call me and you say, Paul, we need to make this move, it's time to make this move. I can make that happen. The fastest move I've made for folks is 6 hours.
So you spend the time you need researching, looking at all the various facilities. What happens? You pick a place and they hold a spot for you?
It's based on availability at the time. So for most places, most assisted living communities will only hold an apartment for 14 days, maybe 30 days. Um, but again, that's okay, because with families that are looking a year out, if they approach a situation where they know things are going to be sooner than later, maybe we've talked 6 months ago and now they call me and say, Paul, Can you start checking in weekly with this assisted living community to make sure that they have a spot available? And if it looks like they're not going to have a spot available, let us know so we can put a deposit down and we can make this move happen in 14 to 30 days. I can do that for families, no problem. Families have been caught before when they don't have somebody like me in their corner, where they have their heart set on a place and then they call this place out of the blue and they say, okay, we're ready to take that apartment that we saw last year that we really loved, and it's gone. So it's always good to have somebody like me in your corner who can make sure that when the time comes, you know whether or not that perfect place for you is still available.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about assisted living?
The most common misconceptions, even with people in the medical field, like physicians and some nurses, they think that assisted livings are skilled nursing homes. And there's real vast differences between the two. So assisted living communities are focused as social model community settings. And that's why I call them assisted living communities, because the idea is that they are that supportive environment, but they're not a strictly medical environment. So you can have assistance with things like your activities of daily living. So, people who need help in the morning getting dressed, help in the bathroom or the shower, people who need help with their medication management, things of that nature. Assisted livings can absolutely help with that. When you need more acute medical care services, that's when you need more of a skilled nursing environment. And there's nothing wrong with skilled nursing. I've had families come to me and say, oh my God, I don't want my loved one to wind up in a skilled nursing home. But a lot of skilled nursing environments are really, really well run, and there's nothing to be afraid of. With assisted living, it is much more that social focus. So that's probably the biggest misconception. The other big misconception is that assisted livings don't have visiting hours, or once their loved one moves in, they're not allowed to leave. That's not true. There are many assisted living communities in this state and other states where residents are still working, where they're driving, where they're going on vacations. Um, when I was an executive director up in Massachusetts at a community, I had a resident who came in. She had just gotten through a big surgery, and she walked into my office and she said, hey, just wanted to say goodbye. I'm hopping in my convertible going down to the Cape. All right, see you later. Have fun. Just because somebody moves into an assisted living doesn't mean life is over. It's just that support. So those are two really big misconceptions.
How did assisted living start? What was the original concept, and where do you think it's going?
It's kind of a fascinating story because it's kind of a line of dominoes happening that caused assisted living. Because when Medicare was established, what came from Medicare were skilled nursing facilities, nursing homes. And there wasn't any assisted living. It was just people going to nursing homes if they needed that. But over the years, people were deciding, I need a little help, but I don't need to go to a skilled nursing environment. I need a little help because I can't be home. It's not safe for me to be home alone, or I'd rather not be home alone, but that doesn't mean that I need to be in this medical model environment. And so assisted living was created in response to the skilled nursing environments. Excuse me. Now, assisted livings at first were all buildings that were converted from something else. So the first assisted living in Rhode Island, for example, is in Warwick, and it's a former church. And if you walk through it, you still see some places that are very church-like. Their dining room has these big, beautiful chapel ceilings, and it's just gorgeous. But you can tell this building was not necessarily purpose-built for assisted living; it was adapted. Um, Over the years, as not just we've learned more about assisted living as an industry, but as different people are getting older. So now we're getting folks who, 20 years ago when they were 50, now are in their 70s, getting close to their 80s, and they're starting to look at assisted living as a very real opportunity. But they're not looking for maybe some of the parts of assisted living that folks were happy with 20 years ago. So now you're seeing a lot of assisted livings that are purpose built, not just for the care services, but really for that social model engagement service as well. So you'll see assisted livings now with full service fitness centers, restaurants, on-site theaters, yoga studios, pools and jacuzzis, you name it. I mean, I've had people describe it to me as assisted living is turning into living on a cruise ship that never leaves land.
So we talked about cost earlier. Is there any assistance? Does Medicaid pay for it?
No, Medicare doesn't. So Medicaid um, can, under certain circumstances, help certain people. So 47% of the assisted living communities in Rhode Island have some type of Medicaid program. However, people need to be very, very careful when they're going into an assisted living community expecting Medicaid to take care of them, because it's not necessarily going to be that way. So, for example, you may go into an assisted living environment and somebody may say to you, "Oh yeah, if you spend down your money for a certain amount of months, you can stay here for the rest of your life on our Medicaid program." But it's really, really important, and this is one of the types of questions that I ask people, that folks that do these tours: how many beds, how many Medicaid approved beds are in this assisted living environment? And for a lot of assisted living communities, it's one, maybe two. So if you've spent down, but there's already 6 people on the waiting list for that one Medicaid bed, you're out of luck. So, again, it goes back to folks who ask, how can we pay for all this? Are there programs out there? And there are programs out there that help defray some of the costs, things like Veterans Aid and Attendance, for example. Um, and I think that as we move forward into a larger share of the population, the current population needing assisted living services, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more programs developed in the future to help folks defray the costs of these services.
So let's say you find a place and you're pretty sure it's the right one, but you want to be absolutely sure. Can you try it out?
Absolutely, and I recommend people do this as well. Most assisted livings in the state offer what's called a respite stay. Now, a respite stay is an opportunity for somebody to go into an assisted living environment for anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on the assisted living, depending on availability, depending on what's worked out with the assisted living community, and depending on what works for the family. The differences with a respite stay, the biggest one is that typically when somebody goes in for a respite stay, they're going into an apartment that's pre-selected for them with furniture provided by the assisted living community. So it feels a lot more like you're living in a hotel as opposed to being in that home-like environment. But the real point is to be able to get an idea of whether or not the services are going to be a good match for you, and whether or not the population is a good match for you, and whether or not the lifestyle is a good match for you. But yeah, absolutely.
So you finally choose a place, you move in, and then you realize for whatever reason this just isn't going to work out. It's not the place for you. You have some options at that point.
Most assisted livings are really good with this too. They have executive directors and other administrative staff on site who you'll be able to reach out and get in touch with and talk with. One of the drawbacks about this industry is that it's growing so rapidly that oftentimes you'll see a lot of movement with some of these key executive pieces. So executive directors can move around a lot, sales directors, nursing directors, they may wind up moving around a lot. So one of the things that I can help my clients do even after move-in is coordinate that continuity of care and make sure that the conversations that we had when that with that initial sales director, that initial executive director, carry forward, so that my clients continue to get those services that they asked for, and that they you know were able to get an agreement for well into their residency.
Going forward, especially considering the current health crisis, do you see any changes in assisted living facilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is that I think that as a wide community, we're now all seeing how hard our healthcare workers work every single day to provide this great care and compassion to our loved ones in assisted living environments and in skilled nursing environments. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more people choosing to go into that field because it's so rewarding and it's something that can really make a difference and an impact in the lives of folks who may not have a lot of family there. So I see a lot in terms of staffing. I see a lot of people that I predict people will want to go into that field more and continue to grow the industry. I also see with assisted living, I wouldn't be surprised if when we return to a period of normalcy, that we see more people choosing assisted living who may have before said, no, I'm going to try to work this out at home. Because I think something that, going back to misconceptions, something that gets lost in translation sometimes of what assisted living is it's a place where folks can engage and get that social interaction and enjoy the company of people who really understand like experiences and like feelings. And you can develop new friendships and new connections with people, maybe people that have lived in your town your whole life but you never had the chance to meet them until you moved into an assisted living. I see that all the time. I've seen people who lived 2 streets apart from each other for 30 years and had never talked, wound up in the same assisted living and became great friends. And I think that that's the type of thing we're going to see more of. you know I don't think we're ever going to take being social for granted again after this. You know what I mean? And if there's one thing assisted living does very well, it encourages people to be social.
Addressing costs for a minute, Paul. You talked earlier about you get a fee or a retainer from a prospective client, and then in the end, when they move in, they get that back. Is that correct? So there's actually no fee for what you do?
That's correct. So, the way that what I do with the assisted living partners I work with is that I've vetted just about every assisted living in the state of Rhode Island. I've walked through those buildings, I've tasted their food, I've seen their activities, met their teams, and I keep very careful records on the comings and goings of the executive team, so I know who to reach out to and talk with. And I know typically under normal circumstances and in normal times what's available, and so I can move quickly for my clients. I can walk into any assisted living in this state right now. Well, maybe not today, but under normal circumstances, and I can say, this is a great place, it's a great fit for you, or it's not the best fit for you. Maybe we should try a different direction. Because again, I don't want to waste anybody's time, and I want to make sure that people have that great quality of life and the ability to age in place. So I do ask for a retainer fee. It's $250, and people do get that back when they move in. And if they move into an assisted living community that I happen to be a contracted partner with, I get a referral fee from that community. That being said, I will, and I do send people to assisted living communities that I'm not contracted with because, and I can't stress this enough, my whole company is predicated on quality of life. So if the right place for you is a place that I don't have a contract with, there it is what it is.
What's the next step if someone's considering a move for themselves or their loved ones? How do they get in touch with you?
So there's a couple of different ways to get in touch with me. The best way would be to call my main line. The main line is 401-488-4935. My email address is paul@careconciergene.com. And my website is www.careconciergene, like New England.com. And I can be reached through any of those formats. I have a Facebook page as well, a LinkedIn page. So feel free to reach out any time of day or night, and I will be happy to help you find the right fit for your loved one.
Paul, thanks for coming on. It's been very educational. We appreciate your time and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.